So let me just redefine a few terms. I've listened to Derek and Gabriel, almost polar opposites. You hear Gabriel, highly relevant in terms of the new way of doing business and that new conscience for the environment. And then I'm not saying that Derek didn't have that, but Derek started to talk about a lot of older names like telco and names that people don't even remember, except for a few of us older folk. So the fact of the matter is almost like, hopefully the story I'll talk about the next 15 minutes would be a sort of intersection of the two, a bit of an intersection of the two. I would like to define or redefine innovation, think about what innovation is, and for us, innovation speaks to anything that betters our planet and people, anything that could better anything that we do on the planet and for our people. The other thing I would like to speak to is entrepreneurship. We have heard a lot about, Natasha introduced us as successful entrepreneurs, and really it's a little bit of a conundrum for me talking about entrepreneurship and being successful. I think the most important thing is that entrepreneurship really lies in that space between a dream and an execution. And really entrepreneurship is at the core, if you look at it, about the allocation of resources without regard for the cost of those resources or where they come from. And I ask you to think about that a little bit, because if you really live the life of an entrepreneur, or you adopt the mindset of entrepreneurship, we all do it in many ways. People talk about it only as it pertains to business people, but we can live our lives with an entrepreneurship mentality just by the way we get ice in our veins for the execution of what we want to do. As I said, the space between dream and execution. And the next thing I want to just redefine a little bit here is that diversify or die. Seems a little bit harsh. So I'd like to use the Darwinian phrase, well, they ascribed it to Darwin, evolve or become extinct. And that also, if you think about it, should not just be for businesses. So let me go into the story of HADCO. And HADCO celebrated 30 years this year, existence. It was founded back in 1992 by myself and my two brothers, Robert and Joseph. Let's go back a bit before that and speak to, we all got our education from, thanks to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I myself, through a national scholarship, and afforded me to go abroad, and my both brothers subsidized educations from the University of the West Indies back then. We did not have the means to be educated, and we grew up in a household that was a working class household. My father was a working class man up until he died pretty young at the age of 49. So, coming out of university, and with my youngest brother coming out of university, we sort of felt, well, if we didn't do something, there would not have been the ability to take care of my mom, who was a cancer survivor at the time. We had a sort of hearing impaired sister who was a bit mentally challenged, and a few other challenges like that. We felt there was a need to go into business and get a business going, and that was the dream for us. What was there to do back then was 1992. So I implore you to think about, well, I left my job at Schlumberger. I was working in Africa at the time, came back home, and we just put our heads together. We had very little capital, and obviously we turned to the banks almost early. What did we play in? 1992, in the 1990s, Trinidad had just come through the restructuring phase with the IMF. It was a dismantling of the negative list. It was a freeing up of the foreign exchange. It was a reduction in duties. There was the espousing of all the free market, philosophies around the world. And there were basically imperatives and inspiration to play to those rules. So what did we do? Import, distribute. We saw little gaps in the system in Trinidad and Tobago where we thought that food service was about to explode. We saw the advent of TGI Fridays and all of these foreign brands coming in to the country, and we thought, well, what about if we imported food and started to distribute to the restaurants and the hotels for which that business was mushrooming at the time. So as I say, I always tell people, it's easy to look back and say, well, why would your business have been built on that? But you have to contextualize things. And I hear Derek talking about a lot of things, and he didn't really contextualize, but the building of businesses around those times where we were playing to the rules that were given to us to play to. And we built our business by and large from 1992 to 2012, 20 years on distribution of food and beverage. We built brands like Häagen-Dazs, we built brands like Yoplait, we built brands from scratch like McCain Fries, and a whole host of other brands that played in the food service. We became one of the larger distributors of products to the hotels and restaurants. And, and you look at it, it was a business on retail distribution. Peppercorns was born, Nova Lighting in terms of the retail front. And what were our core competencies? Our core competencies were cold chain distribution, any type of distribution, and what we promised, 24-hour delivery. You order from us, you get delivery in 24 hours. But at some point around 2012, and I don't know exactly when it was, we started to re-examine the whole conversation. And I think if you look back, you knew that there was a lot of conversation back then about Forex, about how do we, things started to tighten up. And our business was all Forex based, meaning that we needed to get foreign exchange to buy and sell the products that we did. We manufactured nothing. We owned no brands. There were no private labels what we had was a distribution system that was built out, and we thought very well integrated, and that was it. Outside of that, when you sat down to value our company, you would find have a hard time valuing the company properly when you knew that the brands that we were building didn't belong to us. And those could be taken away on a whim, and they did. We lost one or two brands that we built from scratch, like Ocean Spray, that were wake-up calls for us. And we said back in 2012, let's reimagine who we are. And we spent quite a while working on that. And they weren't just boardroom meetings. They were constant, evolving discussions. And we said to ourselves, we needed to own our own brands. We needed to have a significant percentage of our revenue in foreign exchange. We needed to own processes. We needed to make it very hard for somebody to come in and disrupt our business. And by the way, the conversation back then also spoke a lot in Trinidad to inequality in the country, to our social ills, many things like that. And we always felt that business was a force for social change. I mean, that might sound a little bit cliche, but the fact of the matter is we in the private sector do hold a lot of power to deploy capital and make a change to society, actually more power than the government has. Because if you do it well, you actually force change from the government and other institutions like that. So in that reimagining process and the rethinking, we the first thing we did is back in 2012, we went to the banks and restructured. Our business has been, I say this, there are a few things I say, is that our business was built on borrowed money, and 30 years later, we are still built on borrowed money. If you look at the equation has changed on our balance sheet, but our debt to equity is 1-to-1. So it's built heavily on borrowed money and was always built on money. That's the one thing. And we went to the banks and we said, let's restructure. Let's get a syndicated facility. Let's repurpose the way our business was structured financially to allow us to push off into a whole new way of doing business from henceforth onwards. We reimagined where we wanted to be, 20, 30, 40 years on, and we sort of protracted that and worked our way back and said, look, how do we be more, pertinent to what they call now ESG concepts, the environment, social governance? How do we earn our own foreign exchange? And then we declared ourselves open for business. At that point, we said, look, bring ideas to us. We started to generate our own ideas, and we started looking at various ventures at that point. And one of the first things we had jumped into was, sorry, I want to go back there. How do I get back? Yeah, right. Is Creamery Novelties, which is an ice cream factory, as we all know, manufacturing value brand ice creams, and soon to be launching yogurt, all natural yogurt. And we worked, as I said, with Kariri heavily and a whole bunch of others. Actually, this idea was brought to us by our fellow shareholder, Paul Gabriel, and we sat down and looked at it with him. We understood the ice cream distribution business. He came to us and said, would you distribute my ice cream? When we looked at his model, we said, your model is off. We knew ice cream distribution. We had done 75-80% of the volume of ice cream distribution in Trinidad, and we used that knowledge base and the understanding of that to work backwards into how we set the plant up, what we did with the plant, and what is the market segment we played to. We chose the value brand market, and then obviously that rode on the back of the HADCO distribution system for ice cream, which was all of the freezers, the trucks, the storage facilities, the intrinsic knowledge of how to handle ice cream at a mass level. And that brought this product to market probably within a few months of launch in the factory, a lot faster than we had thought that we would have been. And the uptake was very quick for us. So, I just want to put a plug in there and say, innovation sometimes innovation is not only about all the ideas you have, but it's about intersecting those ideas with someone else's ideas and the way you work together and collaborate. And you're going to see that, by the way, and you would hear that even from the birth of the business. You might think that three brothers could run a business together because they're brothers. No. That's the hardest partnership that we had to manage. And not so much by our desire to have more wealth for each person individually or any sort of narcissistic behavior. It was more to do with just making sure that we all collaborated and agreed on a way forward. And if we did not agree, that there was some democratic way of how we approach that. And it becomes harder when you're working with family than it is when you're working with somebody who's not family. Because in our case, as there's a book written about the paradox of choice. There was no choice for us in that relationship. We knew that we were running a three-legged race, in this case a four-legged race, and we were tied together. So it's either we were moving together or we were out. So, and many of the other collaborations and other projects like this we've done does ride on the back of that type of philosophy. Coming out of Creamery, within a short space of time, we started getting involved in this business, which is garbage, recycling. And we started that about 7 years ago. And I have to tell you, I was just talking to Ricky Sukai a little while ago. And here's where IDB Labs has helped us recently with the tire recycling plant. But we bought a business that was collecting used cooking oil, cleaning the used cooking oil, and turning it into a cleaner form of oil that we then export to go into the manufacturing of biofuel. And from that, we blew that open, and because it was a much smaller business, and we used the reverse process of distribution. We went out and collected the oil. So we are collecting all of that oil on the back of trucks. Actually, the reverse of taking delivery from the warehouse to customers. So exactly, I keep coming back to that understanding of the intrinsic value of distribution, and then using that to leverage you into other businesses. And we actually sell the oil. We actually sell the oil for you to fry with and then go back and collect it, to then clean it up and sell it back for US dollars. And by the way, recycling is all garbage to US dollars. So I keep saying that to people, but it really is. And if you could figure out how to get it profitable, it then becomes a highly sustainable business and can exist without government regulation. Because all of what we do is in existence today without government regulation aiding us. We collect paper, we collect cardboard, we batch that, we sell it for US dollars, aluminum cans, Tetra Packs, plastic. We've actually found an avenue for that, and we're working with IKEA, and we're working with the One Bottle Back program, and we're trying to see how much of that we can export, which we are doing right now, both HTP and PET. And we are looking very closely at the possibility of taking that plastic now and turning it into product locally. But remember, all of the plastic we have still doesn't give you the economies of scale, and unless you could get a plant up to do something small, like bricks, like benches, and stuff like that. In the case of the recycling of the tires, we're going to grind it up into a powder form, And we bring in a machine to make gym mats out of that. So we don't know where that is going to go. Again, in the case of recycling, it's just playing around in a space that is very new, and we are quite excited about that. Because we are taking tons of waste out of our garbage dump, if you think about it, that is not going into the landfills and turning that into forex that we then use for the sustainability of our business. We bought a business that actually exports fish, and we've done a lot of work in there to formalize the process and expand it also. It's actually the biggest earner of foreign exchange in our business. And we're quite proud of that too, because it speaks to food, it speaks to hopefully sustainable fishing, if we could influence that, which we are trying to and working very hard to do that. And then taking that and exporting that into the US with all of the necessary certifications behind it for a business that is almost denominated 100% in foreign exchange. And we're looking at other downstream businesses in that vein, like seafood and seafood processing and blast freezing and packaging, especially with some of these second-rate type fish and so. Quite proud of this collaboration, because this is probably one of the most amazing collaborations we've done. That business we don't know if it's ever going to be profitable. We hope so. So there's in the next side of me, I'll take out, put on my hat and say I go to church. Inside of my room every day and pray that it does become profitable, because we put a big bet on this. And it's a collaboration between the artisans in the pan manufacturing business. It's a collaboration between the tuners. It's a collaboration between the guys that came with the technology. We're working with universities abroad to help us with the metallurgy. We're working with universities locally. The shareholding is split across the board, 6 different shareholders. It's really more a cooperative than it is a privately owned business. And, we are turning out steel pans now. We have been selling abroad already, but the uptake is going to take us a while, because people don't really recognize us as yet, and we have a lot of marketing to do. And a lot of our marketing is on social media. Gabriel, you will get that. And the fact is that we're pushing very hard in that whole virtual space to get the product out there. And maybe in 5 years' time I'll report back and tell you how we're doing with it. But we are making instruments out of virgin metal that we bring in from Japan. And there's no machinery. It's all handcrafted internally in a process that's actually turning out hundreds of instruments in a month. That is employing a number of people in that space. And then this last project here, again, another project that is a big risk, is ecotourism. We've taken on the lease to operate the Acerite Nature Resort, and we've bought into the Mont Plaisir Hotel in Grand Riviere, 2 of which play very heavily in the whole ecotourism of Trinidad. Why is that important? It is the one business that we know that really brings together community into business and works in a highly collaborative environment. We're working with the communities in both areas to see as much of the product that we can buy from them to feed into the hotel. We're working with all of the independent hikers and birders and everybody involved in that space to really reorganize that space around 2 of the most important eco-tourist destinations in the country. Now, we have a lot. I hear Derek, thank God he's not here, and I hope he's not here, but I hear him talking about the cruise ships landing and coming with this tram thing through Port of Spain and then to Mohiton. Actually, we want the cruise ship people to hop on a bus driven by a driver from the area of Acerite or Mont Plaisir or any of the others that are being set up right now, because there are many others. Drive them into our most beautiful areas where they can see the waterfall, the birds, and some of the things that people will pay a lot of money around the world to come and experience. We have a gem here. And then take them back. Have them eat some nice kalaloo, pilau, and a nice goat roti up at Acerite. The food is going to be 85% local, by the way, in both resorts. And then head them back and charge them $200 US, not the $150. So, Gabriel, gotta put your Cedros Bay inside of there. Anyhow, so I would just say, look, to the entrepreneurs, here today to all of the young people, keep an open mind. The advice is, Derek gave a very strong story of tenacity, of real tenacity and rigor, and what we call belly. You have to have that. But more importantly, intersect that with an open mind. Listen to the new ways of doing business. Don't take anything off the table. Be open. Learn. Google. You don't have to travel. Gabriel talking about going to all these shows. You don't have to have the money to travel. You have that computer, that device. There's a lot of information there. Use it and reach out for advice. We're all here to give advice. Thank you very much.